Before sunrise, a heavily guarded Russian ammunition train crossed toward Crimea, carrying artillery shells, rockets, fuel, and replacement equipment for units operating in the south. To the soldiers responsible for the shipment, the journey appeared routine. The railway had been used countless times, security patrols were active, and electronic warfare systems were scanning the sky for hostile drones. Yet the train had already been noticed. Ukrainian reconnaissance teams had studied its route, departure time, speed, and probable destination. Rather than attacking immediately, they allowed it to move farther into the peninsula, where the destruction of the cargo would create greater pressure on the Russian supply network. Several drones were launched from concealed positions and began following the railway at low altitude. They avoided the most obvious approach lines, using the terrain, buildings, and natural cover to remain difficult to detect. Russian jammers soon flooded the area with interference, attempting to break the connection between the aircraft and their operators. Normally, that kind of electronic shield could force a drone to lose direction or crash. This time, however, the machines continued forward. Their navigation system relied not only on satellite signals, but also on stored maps, visual landmarks, and automated recognition of the landscape below. Even when the signal weakened, the drones compared roads, fields, bridges, and rail lines with the route programmed before the mission. The train continued moving, unaware that the attack was no longer dependent on a constant radio link. Every kilometer brought it closer to the chosen strike zone, while the operators waited for the moment when the cargo, terrain, and timing would produce the greatest possible effect. No alarm sounded inside the wagons, and no warning reached the crew in time. From their perspective, the track ahead still looked open, ordinary, and safe. At first, the selected location was narrow, exposed, and difficult to escape. The railway curved between raised ground and nearby infrastructure, leaving the train with little room to stop or reverse once the attack began. Ukrainian planners had reportedly calculated that a strike on the locomotive alone might block the line, but hitting the ammunition wagons could produce a far more serious result. As the train entered the area, the first drone descended toward the front section, aiming to disable movement and trap the remaining cars behind it. A sudden explosion struck near the locomotive, throwing debris across the track and forcing the train to slow. Seconds later, additional drones approached from different directions. Some targeted the center of the formation, where the most dangerous cargo was believed to be stored, while others focused on air defense vehicles and security teams traveling with the shipment. The attack unfolded quickly, giving the defenders almost no time to understand where the drones were coming from. Machine guns opened fire, electronic jammers increased their power, and soldiers attempted to leave the train, but the autonomous guidance systems kept the drones aligned with their assigned targets. One aircraft hit a wagon carrying explosives, and the impact triggered a violent secondary blast. Fire spread from one car to another as shells and rockets began detonating inside the train. The railway corridor became a chain of flashes, smoke, and flying metal. What had entered Crimea as a moving supply column was transformed within minutes into a burning obstruction. The destruction was not limited to the cargo itself. The blast damaged rails, overhead equipment, communication lines, and nearby support facilities, making the route unusable until repair crews could reach the scene and clear the wreckage. The sequence mattered more than raw power. Stop the train, strike the cargo, and let its own explosives multiply the destruction. The military importance of the strike extended far beyond the dramatic images of the explosion. Russia depends heavily on railways to move large quantities of ammunition, fuel, armored vehicles, and engineering equipment across long distances. A single train can carry far more material than a convoy of trucks, which makes the rail network essential for sustaining continuous operations. When a shipment of this size is destroyed, the loss affects several units at once. Artillery batteries may receive fewer shells, repair teams may wait longer for spare parts, and commanders may be forced to reduce activity while they search for alternative supplies. The damage to the track creates another problem. Even if replacement ammunition is available elsewhere, it cannot move through the same corridor until the wreckage is removed and the railway is restored. Trucks can be used temporarily, but they are slower, more expensive, easier to observe, and more vulnerable to additional attacks. The incident also forces Russia to divert personnel and air defense systems away from the front. Guards must protect bridges, stations, depots, and rail junctions, while electronic warfare crews try to cover an increasingly large area. Every defensive system moved toward Crimea is one less system available somewhere else. The psychological effect is equally important. A route that once appeared protected suddenly becomes uncertain, and every future train must be treated as a possible target. Crews may travel more slowly, shipments may be divided into smaller groups, and commanders may delay movement until additional security is available. In this way, the destruction of one train can create disruption that continues long after the fire is extinguished. Beyond the immediate shortage, the airstrike can affect planning at headquarters. Officers must recalculate delivery schedules, prioritize units, and accept that carefully prepared timetables may collapse without warning. The operation also demonstrated how quickly drone warfare is evolving. Early battlefield drones depended heavily on direct control, stable communication, and reliable satellite navigation. Powerful jamming could interrupt those systems and make an aircraft useless before it reached its target. Newer platforms are designed to continue operating when the connection disappears. They can store detailed maps, recognize objects, estimate their own movement, and adjust their route by comparing live camera images with information recorded in advance. This does not mean that every drone is fully independent or capable of making unlimited decisions. Human operators still select the mission, define the target area, and establish the rules the aircraft must follow. However, once interference begins, the machine can complete certain parts of the flight without waiting for constant instructions. In the Crimea attack, that ability may have been the difference between failure and success. Russian electronic warfare created an environment in which ordinary commercial drones would probably lose control. The attacking aircraft reportedly continued because they were prepared for that exact situation. Their route followed visible features that could not be jammed: the railway itself, nearby roads, the shape of the coastline, and fixed structures along the corridor. The result shows that electronic defense is no longer a complete answer. Jammers can still reduce accuracy and disrupt many systems, but attackers are adapting by combining automation, visual navigation, multiple approach paths, and coordinated strikes. Each improvement on one side produces a response from the other, creating a rapid cycle of innovation. The battlefield has become a contest not only of weapons and numbers, but also of software, data, engineering, and the speed at which new ideas can be turned into working machines. The lesson was clear. Old defenses could fail against adaptive drones. By the time emergency teams reached the damaged railway, the strategic message of the attack was already clear. Crimea could no longer be treated as a completely secure rear area. Supply lines, depots, bridges, airfields, and transport hubs were all within reach of systems that were becoming harder to detect and stop. For Ukraine, the objective was not simply to produce a spectacular explosion. The deeper purpose was to weaken the structure that allowed Russian forces to operate from the peninsula and support units farther north. Repeated attacks on logistics can create a cumulative effect. One destroyed train delays ammunition, a damaged bridge slows fuel, a burning depot reduces reserves, and a disabled communication center makes coordination more difficult. None of these actions alone guarantees a major change on the front, but together they increase pressure, raise costs, and force constant defensive adjustments. Russia can repair tracks, replace wagons, and send new cargo, yet every repair consumes time, equipment, and manpower. It must also decide whether to concentrate defenses around the most important routes or spread them across many possible targets. Ukraine, meanwhile, can continue searching for moments when surveillance, timing, and technology create a temporary advantage. The event therefore represents more than the loss of a single shipment. It illustrates a broader strategy in which precision attacks are used to make occupation more difficult and military movement less predictable. The train entered Crimea as part of a system designed to keep the war supplied. Minutes later, that same system was blocked by fire, wreckage, and uncertainty. The final outcome was not only physical destruction, but a warning that even guarded routes can become vulnerable when planning, intelligence, and autonomous technology are combined. That uncertainty may last longest, since every future journey will require more caution, protection, and time.